What is up, Art Conference? You doing well? Yeah. Man, a lot of you are asking, how did he get up there? Lots of money. You just give lots of money to ARC and you get to speak a main session. It's really, really cool. Pastor Greg and Pastor Randy, the momentum thing, and I was a big part of it. And now I'm here at ARC Conference. Thought that was gonna go a little bit better. Sounded better in my head. Appreciate a few courtesy laughs down here from the lead team. And I'm excited. I just really want to give honor where honor is due. And it's going to be a little bit emotional because my life and my eternity changed at this church. If it wasn't for ARC, and if it wasn't for Brother Billy and Greg believing and Pastor Chris, I don't know where I'd be right now. And I'm here today because you believed in two guys. And I'm here today because you moved here. And I just can't thank you enough for not this opportunity, but for changing my life and changing where I spend eternity. I'm forever grateful for you two, Pastor Randy, believing in me, taking a chance on somebody who didn't know anything about anything. I just want to thank you guys for leading the way. Give it up for our lead team, Pastor Greg, Pastor Chris, Pastor Randy. I want to talk to you today about something that we've all heard before. Matthew 16, verse 18, Jesus talking to his disciples says, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. I don't know about you, church planner, but when I got into the church planning game, I kind of thought I had a bigger part to play in this thing, and I'm just here to tell you, you don't. Like God's gonna build his church and he's gonna do things in you and through you. It may not be at your pace and it may not be the race that you thought you were gonna run, but he's gonna build his church if you will just remain faithful. And I wanna talk to you today about my journey, about my race and what God has done. I wanna take you on a journey through, it's really this project that I've done myself. How many handy people do we have there? How many carpenters? How many people are good with their hands? I hate all of you. I'm terrible at anything. I can't even change a light bulb in my own house. Like I shoot a text message to somebody on my team, hey, my lights are out, can you come change it? I am awful. I am not a carpenter. I'm a handyman. You say those are the same people. No, I'm a man that hands the man the tools. I'm great at getting lemonade. I'm great at going to Home Depot, sending 15 pics like, hey, is this what you needed? What about this? Anybody else super embarrassed when you go to Home Depot or Lowe's? You're like, you never felt like less of a man? I want to take us on a before and after journey today because I think that all of us in this room, either today or at some point in our ministry journey, in our church planning journey, will find ourselves in one of these stages. We need to be fixed. We need to be sanded down. Maybe we need to be painted a different color, maybe stained a little bit different, or maybe we need to be sealed and really sealed in the purpose that God has for us. I want to talk about a before and an after experience. My prayer all week has been that we would have a before and after experience. From the lead team down to your first time at ARC Conference 2017, that you'll remember before you came, who you were, and now after you're here, I pray that your life, your marriage, and your church would never be the same. Before and after. We love a before and after experience as Americans these days, right? HGTV is on every dentist office, every doctor's office. I've been in the dentist like 7 times in the past 3 weeks. I had a terrible experience, and I find myself watching more Chip and Joanna and Property Brothers and House Hunters. Did you know that you can chase butterflies and work at Starbucks one day a week and have a $1.8 million budget for your home? Did you know that? I mean, that's amazing. Shows are so stupid. They're not even real. We love a before and after. When it comes to fitness, we love it. Before, you look like this. 7-minute abs for 7 days, you look like this. And you're like, that's a different person. Speaking of being stuck in the middle, one looked like Jason and one looked like Earl. Like that's a different race, it's a different gender. And I'm not making a political statement, I'm just saying that's different people. Love the before and after. I remember before Google, I never lost an argument. You own your argument with conviction, boldness, stand your ground no matter what. After the Google, I haven't won an argument in my home in 11 years. Apparently my wife can read, and I'm wrong a lot. Before and after. You remember before you were married to your spouse and then after? It's different. If you're single in here, maybe you're engaged, it changes. It all changes. Before you're married, you go out on a date, and you got the whole night planned, you got reservations. After you're married, you're like, hey, what do you want to do tonight? Oh, I just want to stay in? Okay, great. If you went out on that date before you're married, you open the door, you shut it, maybe you drop her off. After you're married, both your arms work, don't they? Like, can't we both walk in together? You got a cramp or something? We good? It's a big deal. We both walk to the car. It's not a big deal. Thought we built this thing on Christ, not chivalry. Let's go. Before you're married, you never finished a movie. Every single time you watched a movie, you never finished. You couldn't keep your hands off each other. After you're married, you still never finish a movie because you're both asleep. Before you're married, you go to that nice dinner, maybe it's a little spicy and your stomach is just in knots. You know what I'm talking about? You've been there before. You're like, dear God, when's she ever gonna leave? Can we just get out of the car, shut the door? Dying. After you're married, you get in that car, you lock the doors, you lock the windows. You're right. Before and after, things change. I think a lot of you came into art conference doing this thing on your own. And HGTV may be popular, and DIY may be great television, but it's a terrible vision for your church, and we cannot do it alone. God's got to build this thing. How? I'll give you 4 stages if you're taking notes. The first one is this, 4 stages that we're gonna walk through in our time together today. The first one is we gotta let God fix it. Everybody say fix it. We gotta let God fix it. We gotta allow God to fix what is broken before we build for the future. We got this chair back here, it's broken. You just pick it up at a thrift store. You pick it up at a garage sale. It's got tears in it. This back part back here is cracked, it's broken. And some of us are walking into this conference broken and we're covering it up. And I'm just telling you, the first stage for you building the church that God has called you to build is to allow him to fix some things. Have some things that are broken. Speaking of breaking things, anybody ever been to IKEA? All church planners go to IKEA. Your office is probably IKEA right now, maybe your bedroom. I hate IKEA. We've clarified that I'm terrible at putting things together or building things. You go to IKEA, you get a whole living room suit fits in a box this size. Right, I remember we were planting the church, one of our pastors was putting together his desk, and he started putting it together, got it all the way done, and we were trying to get the drawers in it, and it would not fit. He put it together backwards. It looked fine to the naked eye, but it wasn't gonna fulfill its purpose. You could have hid it. You could have had the drawers on the floor, maybe gone and got some more IKEA containers, which I think that is their scheme to get you to come back. It's gonna break. IKEA is just like sin. It'll take you further, keep you longer, and cost you more than you ever wanted to pay. You know what I mean? You can never get out of there. You can never get out of IKEA. And I remember talking to him thinking, why don't we just leave this desk the same? Let's just leave it. Nobody will ever notice it. It'll be fine. It will function. I think far too many of our churches are just functional and they're not fulfilled. And we need to break some things so that we can allow God to fix some things today. There are things that are broken. And I don't know if you're like me, but I'm a lot better at preaching to others instead of changing myself. It's so much easier to preach than it is to change. Have you ever noticed how good the advice that you give to others is? You'll even be there sometimes in a session thinking, man, that was really good. But the problem is a lot of times that same situation will come to life in your marriage or with your kids, and then you're like, who are these people? And how can I help? Hey, pastor, start following your own advice. Heard Pastor Craig Rochelle say that a few weeks ago at a conference. Give the advice that you would give to somebody else and then live that out. Begin to fix some things. We're so great as pastors and preachers at telling the truth to everybody else, but lying to ourselves. And there's some things that we need to fix if we're gonna let God use us and build the local life-giving church that he's called us to. Let him fix it. Let him fix it. There's some broken parts to us. What I found is a broken chair has a limited purpose. Let's fix some things. The good news is Revelation 21:5, Jesus looks out and says, look, I'm making all things new. My prayer for you today is if there's some things that are broken in your life, that God, even in this moment right now, will begin revealing himself to you and showing his love for you, not as a planter, not as a pastor, but as a person that he died for. And he's making some things new. He's fixing some broken things so he can build for your future. He's got to fix it. Second stage of this journey with this chair, we got this ugly stage back here. This is the toughest one. It's easy to see what we need to fix. A lot of times anybody can see it. If we're really honest, we can go into the mirror, we can see it. This second stage, we gotta strip some things down, because once we put it back together, it still needs to be sanded down. There's still some rough spots. Here's what I want to talk about here. There's some things that don't belong in our life that we gotta let God strip away. We're all familiar with this story. Everybody knows Luke 15, right? The prodigal son. Everybody's heard that story. I don't need to tell it to you or read it to you. We know the prodigal son. We have the younger son, and he says, I want my inheritance. He goes out, and the Bible says that he begins living this lifestyle of wild living. He loses everything. Famine hits the land. He goes out and says, I deserve this now. Hey, church planter, you don't deserve it now. God's got a process for you. Don't run away from the Father. Run to the Father. His first mistake was breaking relationship because he thought he deserved something. In ministry, contrary to popular belief, sometimes will be a pursuit that will cause you to break relationship with your Father when really you're supposed to stay home the whole time. So he finds himself right there in Luke 15:15. And what is he doing? He's lost everything. He goes and takes a job doing what? Feeding the pigs. You know that part in the story where he's working all day feeding pigs for a rich farmer, right? If you take this from an academic level, a young Jewish boy who's left his home, lost his inheritance, he's spending all day doing what? He's spending all day sweating, working, sun up to sundown, feeding pigs. Have you ever thought about what a Jewish man, a Jewish person, somebody from that culture can't eat? Pork. So this young boy who had an inheritance, who had a great relationship with his father, is now spending every single waking moment, sun up to sundown, sweating, bleeding, feeding something that can never feed him. He's feeding the pigs. And in our churches and in our lives and our pursuit of success and pursuit of what I deserve and what I get and what I need, you're feeding something, and I'm feeding something that can never feed us, and we got to strip it away. I'm talking about insecurity. I'm talking about comparison. I'm talking about looking at somebody else's journey and thinking, man, I wish that was my journey. You can't. This thing is not about how big a platform we can stand on, but how low we can make ourselves to serve our city. It's not about you. It's about what God is doing in you and through you. Allow him to strip away the insecurity. Be transparent with you for a moment. I visited a great church in Houston about a year ago. One of my best friends in the world, Pastor Jeremy Foster, leads an amazing church, Hope City. And I went out there and I'd heard all the stories and heard all the things, and man, this is the fastest growing church, maybe early church in American history. And I began making all these excuses for why, because we always like to think there's gotta be a reason they're doing it and we're not doing it. And I began quantifying all of his success, never even met him. And I went out there and I started looking around and thinking, man, wow, what? I was quantifying everything. I left there so convicted because I went in and I didn't see what I had quantified. I saw a genuine man who loved his wife, who loved his kids, who was a great leader, who was building a great move of God. And I left that trip saying, I will never compare myself to anybody else, but I will celebrate. Because what I found our conference is you can't compare yourself to somebody else and celebrate them. So I choose to celebrate what God is doing in the life of other people. You can't do both. And here's the deal, how do you know if you're doing it? If you're quantifying somebody else's wins, you're magnifying your own insecurity. Don't quantify, celebrate. Can I give you some bad news? There's always somebody bigger than you. Right? I mean, just think, you go try on a new shirt, you're like, man, I look good. You walk out, you're like, man, that guy wears it way better. Yeah, always somebody bigger than you. We had a great Easter this year. So grateful for what God did at Action Church and what he's doing in our church. Pastor Chris Hodges texted me, how did Easter go? I told him, I was like, man, unbelievable. We had over 3,500 people, 150 people came to know Jesus Christ. I said, how did yours? I made the mistake. How did it go at Highlands? He said we had that many people serving at the 8 a.m. I'm just kidding. He did not say that. He did not say that. That is true, but he did not say that. There's always somebody bigger than you. Always. Every time. Always. Pastor Stephen Furtick's preaching tomorrow night. Always somebody on a bigger platform with bigger influence. Find what you're good at and run your race. Because I know that I'm fitter than both those guys, and I can definitely beat them in a foot race, and I'm gonna hang my hat on that. I can't preach like Furtick, I can't build a church like Pastor Chris Hodges, but I can beat them both in the weight room. And you think Pastor Stephen looks bigger than you, I heard he skips leg day. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying. I don't know. That's not even true. I'm gonna honor him. I'm sure he's stronger than me and a better church and everything. Somebody's bigger. Somebody's bigger. Somebody's bigger than you. Somebody's always bigger than you. I'll tell you something else I found true. Someone's always gonna be bigger than you. But there is nobody better than you to do what God has called you to do. There is no better person to lead your family. There is no better person to reach your city. There is no better person to raise your kids. There is no better person to lead that youth ministry. There is no better person to watch those kids and disciple those kids. There is no better you. You are the best you that's ever been created. So stop comparing yourself. Stop feeding something that will never feed you. Allow God to strip away the insecurity and allow God to strip away the fear of failure and allow God to strip away the bitterness and say, God, I'm just gonna pursue you. Strip away everything that's not of you. You gotta allow him to fix it. You gotta allow God to strip it. Thirdly, we need to allow God to paint it. This third step in the journey, we go from it being broken to fixed and fixed to sanded down and prepared. And now we're ready for a new stain, a new color. We're ready to really go on this process to being made new. This third stage, to let God paint it, you've got to give him the brush. God's vision for your church is so much bigger than your vision. We all know the verse, Ephesians 3:20, now to him who's able to do immeasurably or exceedingly abundantly more than we could ask or imagine. God's gonna build your church and he has a vision for it. Begin, pastor, maybe begin again, church leader, with the end in mind. And not the end of your church of 10,000 or 15,000. Begin with the end in mind of well done, good and faithful servant. Run your race. I found we gotta begin with the end in mind because the middle might suck a little bit. I don't know what your journey's been like, but there's been some seasons of suck. We moved down 4 years ago to Plant Action Church, and by all accounts, in the ARC world, by all accounts, we were a success. We were 6 months into the church, coming into our first fall. We had just My wife had just given birth to our second son, Kingston. So we birthed a church and birthed a baby in the same season. Don't do that. Don't do that. And we were successful. We were a model. We were coaching. I don't even know if you know this. Josh Monty had just kind of restarted the coaching program. In that fall, we were running about 600 people. People were getting saved every week. We were a model church, and together we were coaching 44 church planners. He was coaching 23, and I was coaching 21. I had a spreadsheet to figure out who their name was and where they came from. And we're crushing the church planning deal. The problem is that my home was falling apart. And in a world, I'm talking to church planners right now, in a world that's out of control, when you move to that city, you leave structure and you leave maybe a big church or a small church, you leave meetings and you just have so much to do and no clue how to do it and no clue how to do your schedule. And when you can't control this big thing God has called you to, you'll try and control everything else. And I began to control my wife and control my kids. And I remember sitting on a date night at a local restaurant in Orlando, Florida. And that afternoon, we were texting back and forth in a huge argument. And it had gotten to the point where my wife had said, I don't even know if I want to talk to you again without somebody else in the room. So controlling, so manipulative, so insecure. Just everything was being exposed in our church planning journey. And I remember sitting there crying together. We never went into that restaurant. For about 3 hours, we sat in the car. And I'll never forget the statement that she ended up making at the end. And I think this will set some of you guys free, some of you ladies free. She said, are we here for life? Is this where we are gonna be buried? Is this where we're gonna raise our kids? And I said, absolutely. And she said, I feel like you're running this race and you're running at such a pace that you're gonna ruin this thing. If we're gonna die here and we're gonna build this thing and we're gonna live here, why are you in such a hurry? Why are you in such a hurry? And I felt the Spirit of God talk to me that night and said, I don't value success, I value obedience. It's well done, good and faithful servant. In the myth of a young church planner is we're gonna arrive somewhere one day. I was pulling into the airport to fly here and I saw the arrivals and the departures, you know those signs? And I got this thought that if the goal is arrival, then we have departed from our true purpose, which is being faithful with what God has given us. We gotta allow him to paint something beautiful with our story. And here's where it starts. It starts in your family. Let him paint something beautiful in your family. The overflow of your walk with God and the overflow of your healthy family will produce the life-giving local church and get you to the point where the end is well done, good and faithful servant. Here's the fourth thing I want to give you. We got to fix it. We got to strip it. We got to paint it. And this last deal, we got to seal it. We got to seal it. We got to protect the progress by sealing the deal. I think we get here a lot. We fix it, we sand it, we paint it, we get to this spot over here. This chair's like good to go. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't sit in that one. That one may still have some splinters. This one may have some wet paint. This one is sealed and set. Like it is ready to roll. This is where we need to get to. What I want to talk about here, I want to talk about our character. Far too many of us are not finishing the race because we're not sealing the deal. We're far too concerned with the crowd and not our own character. And when your charisma outpaces your character, you sacrifice your calling. Here's what I want to talk about here. What's the chair made of? Wood. That's not everybody. Some people in the back are like, I don't know. Come on, the cameras are more than your launch budget. You can see it. It's true, that wasn't a joke. Just making a statement, they're great cameras. I'm glad I honored Pastor Chris before I made 2 jokes about him. I'm never gonna be up here again. I better enjoy it. I'm gonna make these last 10 minutes and 14 seconds count. It's made of wood, right? It's made of wood. Where does wood come from? Trees. Yes. What makes trees grow? Water was the answer. You could have done the sun or photosynthesis and got real smart on me, but I'm from Birmingham. We ain't brilliant. And so we're gonna go with water. We're gonna go with water. Water makes the wood grow. We get the wood and we turn it into a chair. The chair gets its purpose from water. So what gave this chair life, if you will, take some creative liberties in the sermon. What gave this chair life is water. You know, if we don't seal the deal, if we don't seal it properly, then the very thing that gave it life will be the very thing that rots it. The very thing that birthed it and gave it its purpose and gave it its ability will be the very thing that kills it. And I think our influence and our passion, our charisma leader that builds that launch team, that attracts those people, if you start to rely on that instead of Christ, you won't seal the deal and your character will be compromised. I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. The gates of hell cannot destroy your church, but they will try and destroy you. And so we've got to seal the deal by protecting ourselves. It comes to our purity, our humility, our character. Seal the deal. Can't do it alone. DIY, great television, terrible vision for your church. We gotta do it together. I want to bring out the keys in my last illustration. You know what I found? The keys are always a thank God moment. Some of you are like, thank God it's over and it's lunchtime. So like, thank God it's about to get good. And so I'm going to go with the second one. It's a beautiful table. I didn't make this. Somebody provided this. Well done. Thanks, guys. Here's what I want to finish. How many of you ever gone to a really nice restaurant? Have you ever gone to like a really nice restaurant? How many like to go to a nice restaurant? I love good food. You know what I love about Art? Art loves food. I remember the first time I hosted Brother Billy. I was working for Pastor Randy, and I picked him up from the Tampa airport. We had about a 45-minute drive. We had dinner reservations at Bonefish Grill, and we were gonna go out to eat. And I was just a young 23-year-old kid, glad I got to host and hang out with really cool people. And we had dinner reservations about 7 o'clock. It was about 4:30. So I said, Brother Billy, we're gonna drop you off at the hotel. I'll wait down in the lobby for you. You need anything, I'll grab your coffee, whatever you need. He goes, hey, let's go by that KFC and get a little snack. I said, Billy, we got dinner in like 2 hours. He goes, yeah, just a little snack. Just run in there real quick. So I said, okay, what do you want? He said, I'll take a 3-piece. And it was a KFC and a Long John Silver's. He said, go and get a couple pieces of fish for that too. I said, we're going to Bonefish. You're eating Long John Silver's? He's like, yeah, it'll be fine. Never forget that little snack. It's 2 combos. That's more fish than Long John Silver's sold the previous month at that location. I love art. We love to eat. We love to gather around food. I love going to a nice restaurant. You sit down at the table, right? The waitress, the server comes and takes your order. And at the really nice places, you get what they call a la carte sides. Come on, somebody like a Fleming's or a Ruth's Chris. I need to end this in the next like 2 minutes so we go get some lunch. I love it because you don't ever have like buyer's remorse. You know what I mean? You ever gone to a restaurant and you order your food and then somebody else orders their food, you look across the table, you're like, man, I should have gotten that side. Like you're on like a Whole30, like a paleo plan, just like gnawing on your little trees, and they got like a loaded potato with bacon and cheese, sour cream. Just down there eating some trees. Tastes like the chairs. What I love about these nice places is that when you go there, you get your entree, you get your main course, but then you have sides to share with the whole table. That I have my deal and you have your deal, but when we come together, you're like, hey, can I have some of that? Absolutely. Man, that looks really good. Go ahead and pass that over here. Are you gonna finish that one? I would love some of that. We've got sides to share. That sounds just like Ark to me. You have your main course. You have your vision for your city. You have your dream for your community. Pull up your chair to our table because we've got sides to share. We don't keep anything back. I get texts all the time. Hey, what did you do for At the Movies? What clips did you use? I'm not sure it's legal, but I'll send them right on over. Ask for forgiveness. Hey, how did you handle that staff difficulty? Well, you know what? We just went through that. I've got some sides to share on that. I've got some information to share. What was your marketing plan for Easter? How did you launch that location? What did you do here? How did you handle that tragedy in your city? I remember Pastor Dino was the first person to text me with the Orlando shooting. He said, get ahead of this. Let me know how I can help you. And then I remember when the floods broke out, texting Mike Heyman and Jonathan Stockstill saying, hey, how can we help you? How can we send a team to serve you? Why? Because at ARC, we've got sides to share. Good sides to share. And if you heard nothing else from me today, I want you to hear this. I think ARC 2017 is your before and after moment, because I want to invite you to pull up a chair. You have a promise, church planner, that God's going to build your church, and the gates of hell are never going to prevail against it. You have a group of people that believe in you, and I mean really believe in you. You need people. I sat at a table last night with two of my best friends in the world. We didn't talk much about church. We didn't talk much about anything I can repeat here right now. We just shared some stories because we're doing life together. I want to invite you to pull up a chair. Pull up a chair. Let God fix the broken pieces so He can build the future He has for you. Pull up a chair. Allow Him to strip away the insecurity. Allow Him to strip away the fear of failure and the comparison. Pull up a chair. Let Him paint something incredible with your story. Pull up a chair. Let God seal your character and your purity, your integrity. Pull up a chair. You need to pull up a chair because our cities need us. You need to pull up a chair because that marriage in your community is in the balance and you hold the answer in Jesus Christ. Pull up a chair. Church planner, pastor, pull up a chair. Let's change the world together. Would you bow your heads right here? The main room in the theater as well. I want to pray for you. God, we love you so much. God, I thank you for this opportunity to share our story. The mountaintops and the valleys. God, I pray that what people heard was you were faithful through it all. And that regardless of where we find ourselves today, there's room at the table. You're gonna do some incredible things in us. God, you're gonna begin to build us so we can help build your church. God, I pray for all my friends. I pray that they find exactly that this week. They find friends to link arms with and do this together. That we have a before and after. I came into ARC Conference one way. I'm leaving full of faith, full of new friends, and on fire to reach my city in Jesus' name. We love you. We give you all the praise. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Come on, let's clap our hands for Justin.